Are you thinking about making a move to Sugar Land, Texas? Well, in this video, I'm gonna give you the good, the bad, the ugly, everything you need to know about living out in the Southwest Houston metro of Sugar Land. Hi, my name is Aaron, and every week I'm helping buyers relocate to and throughout the greater city of Houston and the surrounding suburbs. And if you need to know anything about where to eat, sleep, live, play, hit me up morning, noon, or night. I'm your guy. It doesn't matter if you're a day, a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years out. I would love to be a resource to you. And today's video is all about Sugar Land. It's one of my favorite suburb communities just outside of the greater Houston metro. It's just southwest of downtown Houston, and it has a ton to offer for people that are looking for a quiet suburban lifestyle with a lot of things to do. I've been doing a lot of touring out there recently, and it's recaptured that love that I once had for the Sugar Land area. I know when I first moved out here to the greater Houston metro and I was living out there with my aunt out west, I would often run into Sugar Land from time to time to just run different errands for her, to do different things while I was out in the west side of town. And I would just have all these run-ins where I would be coming in from Richmond and going into Sugar Land. And it was one of the first parts of town that I was just like, man, I really love how this looks. I can't wait to move out here officially and buy a home out here. It was one of those first picture perfect kind of suburb sort of vibes that I ever felt out in Houston once I moved out here. And so it kind of recaptured that love with all the touring I've been doing out there recently. So I thought it would be great to bring my experiences and my thoughts to you about the Sugar Land area. And so if you're not familiar with what Sugar Land is, where it is, this is where it is. It is just southwest of the greater Houston metro. It is kind of landlocked. And so one of the things that you're going to see is that where Sugar Land is, it kind of stretches up a little bit towards the West Park Tollway. So kind of running up into some of the parts of Richmond that we've seen before is landlocked by Aliana. It's landlocked by this part of Richmond. It's landlocked basically by Missouri City and all of these other surrounding kind of neighboring suburbs that are growing and expanding. But the borders of what Sugar Land is pretty much landlocked where it is right now, right? So there's not going to be much expansion outside of it because, like I said, places like Richmond, Rosenberg have kind of claimed all of this land. If you're trying to go out east of it, Missouri City has kind of claimed all of this. Once you get to a certain point, you start to get into those Sharon and all those other southeast kind of communities, Iowa colonies, all these places that kind of line up around 288. They're starting to grab all of this land right now. So there's not really much more that Sugar Land can do. From a standpoint of miles, it is definitely one of the closest suburbs that we have to the greater Houston metro. I think the only one that is probably a little bit closer is still Humble, the Humble-Atascocita area. But this one comes in at right around 20 minutes from downtown Houston. And in my previous life in the construction world, I did this drive. It wasn't that bad. I can tell you that there are some parts of this drive that are gonna pretty much drive you crazy from where I was living. I was basically living in the Midtown downtown area, and I would have to make this commute out to Sugar Land for a hospital that I was building with my old company. And this little range up in here can get a little bit dodgy, but if you can get past, I would say, if you can get past the Beltway with enough time, you'll be pretty fine if you can make it out of here. But there were some days where I would hit some traffic up in here and it would be, you know, closer to an hour, where it's saying right now you'd be about 30 minutes. On average, I would say it would probably be in that 30 to 45 minute range. So this is definitely one of the closest suburbs that you can get if you plan on being in and out of downtown Houston with a fairly consistent basis. And so with it being so close and being like an actual suburb, I know the first thought is, you know, this channel being Mr. New Construction, what new things can I get out there? That way I can have that suburb life as well as have that downtown city life that I want to have, right? That happy balance that most people kind of search for. And unfortunately, because it is landlocked the way that it is, and it is a community that was kind of started in like the 50s, 60s as its own official thing, because it is where it is and that it is landlocked the way that it is, there's not really much room for expansion. As I mentioned earlier, there's only a handful of places that are still doing new construction, and most of those are by like the same builder, Taylor Morrison, out there as of this recording. And so there's not much expansion for growth and for new construction like you're gonna see in the neighboring communities of Richmond, of Aliana, of Katy, of Rosenberg, of Missouri City. There's so many places that are still expanding, still growing, and still giving you an opportunity to build brand new. But they, in the Sugarland area, this is basically going to be the land of the existing community. All of these, you know, you're going to have some communities that are huge, massive, that give you these large mansion style homes. You're going to have some more standard suburb communities that, you know, the houses are more regulated, more de-restricted. You're going to have the mixes that you're going to have. You're going to have the lake life, the walking trails, all the things and the amenities that you're going to need, but you're not going to have many opportunities for new construction in Sugarland right now, especially under about 600,000. Most of these are going to be your big home sites in the estate sections of most of the Sugarland area right now. And to kind of show you what I mean, let's just hop on into HAR and I'll show you. So right now I just have everything set to Sugarland no construction. No new construction. The moment I change this over to new construction, we go from 308 options to 10 options total. And if you remember kind of what that map of Sugarland looked like, this is basically the areas that we're up against, right? So we're surrounded by Siena and Missouri City. We're surrounded by the Richmond Rosenbergs and the Alianas, all these established communities that have already taken up all this land. We're already surrounded. And so kind of as I was just mentioning, you're going to get some of these more luxury style homes, these big homes on these large lots in some of these communities that were already established and have probably been there 10, 15 years at this point. You're getting these closeout mansions out in these areas, right? But the overall like starter home, brand new construction, you're not really going to have that many options to do that in the greater Sugarland area. And this one is in one of the more well-known communities out in the Sugarland area, Riverstone. And so this one's a big name that you're going to hear kind of over and over if you're looking and touring in that greater like Richmond, Sugarlandy kind of area. You're going to hear Riverstone a lot. And this one is a Taylor Morrison community or a Taylor Morrison development that they're doing out there, and it's kind of close to close out at this point, right? So there are some opportunities out there. This is a gorgeous home. Kind of reminds me of the Westonville with that rotunda style stairwell that Weston is kind of more known for. But Taylor Morrison has some similar layouts that are gorgeous, that give you the natural light and all these things that you want. But like I said, there aren't going to be too many opportunities under probably about 600,000 or 700,000 where you're going to get a brand new construction home, single family home out there in the Sugarland area. But one of the reasons why you move to a Sugarland is because you want the amenities and you want things to do. And Sugarland has no shortage of that because it is such an established community and things have already been there for over 10, 20 years at this point. There's so much stuff that's going to be there. You're not going to be lacking for your Home Depots. You're going to have your HEBs. You're going to have your restaurants. You're going to have your chain things. You're going to have the walking trails. You're going to have the parks and all the recreational things that you're going to need, your movie theaters. You're going to have everything that you're going to want to do and have in Sugarland. You're never going to really need to feel like you need to move away from Sugarland. And that's one of the beautiful things of most of our suburb communities surrounding the greater Houston area, is that they are pretty much very self-sufficient. Once you get there and you plant roots anywhere in one of the suburbs of the greater Houston area, you're going to feel pretty secure that you don't ever have to really leave there. You're going to have your hospitals, you're going to have your schools, you're going to have your groceries, you're going to have your entertainment. All the stuff that you need is going to be in that community. So you don't feel like you need to get in and out of Houston to have a great time. And one of the things that Sugarland has that the other suburb communities don't have is that they have an official AAA affiliate to the Astros. They have their own minor league team out in Sugarland called the Space Cowboys. And so this is a team that I've always wanted to check out. I had an opportunity a couple years ago to check it out with my aunt, and I ended up having to do some tours on that day, so I couldn't go and do it. But it's one of those things where this is just an experience that I hear is a great time. It's a fun family event that the kiddos are going to love. People that love baseball are going to love. And it's an opportunity to do something in your own backyard that the other suburbs that you're not going to get in the Humboldt, that you're not going to get in, you know, a Pearland, or you're not going to get in the Woodlands or some of these other communities. This is going to be exclusive to the Sugar Land area, right? And so if you are a baseball lover, you don't have to feel like you need to go and travel into downtown to experience the Astros. You got your own team in your own backyard. So who is this community for? It's for people that want a little bit of a slower pace of lifestyle, that want that suburban feel, but don't want to be too far away from the center of downtown Houston. You kind of want to have that life of seclusion, but inclusion at the same time, and Sugar Land can accomplish that for you. But if you are working in some of these neighboring communities like a Richmond, like a Katy, like a Missouri City, and you don't necessarily like how those feel to you, if those don't call and pull at the heartstrings of somewhere that you want to call home, then living in Sugar Land and commuting to those neighboring places is not going to be the biggest task for you to do. But like I always tell you, and I always tell my clients, is once you get to a place, if you need to be in downtown Houston, or if you need to be on the opposite side and you need to be on the northeast side of this loop, is Sugar Land going to be the best place for you? Likely not. Anytime you have to pass through this beltway, there's a time-space vortex of continuum of black holeness that can occur, that can take your route from a traditional 30 to 40 minute route to an hour, hour and a half. If there's a wreck, if there's any sort of thing that can get in your way between you getting to work or play or wherever you need to be, if it is a situation where there's a wreck anywhere in here, you can already see that this has changed in the couple minutes that we've been recording this. This went from a 27-minute thing to an almost 40-minute thing, and there's a lot of red in here now, right? So because it is where it is, you have the potential to run into traffic if you need to be in and out of the city on a fairly consistent basis. But it is going to be a great location if you're going to be having fun and working and playing in these neighboring communities out here. But the moment you need to start crossing over these loops to get anywhere, you're putting yourself in a potential situation where you're going to see some traffic, or more traffic than you would if you were, let's say, working out and playing out in these areas out here. And another reason I love the area is because you can get a variety style of home. You can get those homes that are kind of more cookie cutter, a little bit more traditional. You can get some that are a little bit older and have a little bit more character. And you can have some that are those mega mansions like we looked at a couple moments ago that are on a lake and all that stuff, right? You can get a huge variety of style of home in the Sugar Land area, and it's one of the reasons why I love the area like I do. And it's not a place where you feel like you have to break the bank. I was out there touring most recently with clients that were looking at $350,000 homes and below, and you can still get, you know, a nice size home that's over 2,000 square feet that doesn't need, you know, to be a full gut job. It's going to be a little bit dated. Is it going to be fully renovated? Likely not, but it is move-in ready in most of these communities that are already established. So you're going to have the nice trees, you're going to have the nice walking trails. Most of these are going to be HOA communities that are, you know, that you feel protected, that you feel are nice, and that your neighbors are taking care of their house, and the lawns are looking good, and the neighborhood looks clean and safe. You're going to have that feel in many of the Sugar Land communities, and you don't have to break the bank to get that. And so to show you what I mean, let's hop on over into HAR and hover around a little bit. So let's just look at this. And so for an example, you know, this is a pretty decent community. It's not super old, early 2000s. Now, is this move-in ready? Yes, you have granted. Now, is this up to your taste? Is this my taste? Not so much, but you're going to start to see that you have a ton of options that are, you know, 1,800 to 2,500 square feet, depending on the amenities of the community and the things that you need. But it's layouts that aren't super compartmentalized because they're built in the 2000s, right? So you're going to get more modern layouts that are going to give you a good stamp, or that are going to give you a good layout that you can change and make it your own and put your own touches on. But you're going to get move-in ready houses that are under $350 pretty much all day long out there. And when you get into the $500,000 plus, you're going to start to see that the neighborhood and the community can feel a little bit more regal. You're going to get some of these bigger homes, these more estate style living homes that are going to look really nice on the outside and have the communities with the walking trails and all that stuff, right? So you can definitely get a different style of home and a different more grand style of life depending on your budget out there, but you don't have to feel like you need to break the bank. Like I said, I've been touring with a bunch of families out in that area that are looking in that 400,000 and under range, and you can get a ton of options out there right now. Like most of my people that are moving out to the suburbs, they're usually family people, right? And so one of the first concerns that people that are moving out to an area like that is how are the schools? What's the school district like? And you're going to be tied to and associated to Fort Bend ISD out in the greater Sugar Land area, which is a solid, super solid school district in the greater Houston metro. And so to hop on over and kind of look at the stats, it is rated an A on niche, and I'll leave the link in the description so you can go and check it out and check out the individual schools of some of these houses that you're going to be interested in. But you know, overall it's an A. Diversity, we're going to dive into that. That's one of the first things that I look at is kind of what the diversity stats are, what the teachers and academic stats are. And college prep, all of that is super important to me and most of the clients that reach out to me when they're making that move or thinking about making a move to the Sugar Land area. And so it is rated an A, so your kiddos are definitely going to be in great hands. And depending on where you're located, like most of these communities here, there's tons of schools and feeder schools throughout the greater, Sugar Land area. So not everybody is going to be in the same schools. Each school is going to have its own individual rating, but the overall rating of the district is an A, which is a great start for you of someone that's trying to move to the area. So diving a little bit more into the diversity claim of it all, and you can see that I would agree that it is fairly diverse, that most of the percentages are right around the same. And so although many places claim to have the diversity of everybody, it is typically just because they have different ethnic backgrounds at the school, but the percentages are not very diverse. So it will be one group that has basically 90% and then the others kind of split up that 10%, but this one seems to be a little bit more split out for the demographics of what the greater Houston metro looks like. And so I would definitely agree that this one is definitely a little bit more diverse. And so no matter kind of where you decide to buy a home, because the numbers and the demographics kind of are what they are, you're going to kind of have a kiddo that feels like they're not the only one of anything pretty much in any of the schools in the greater Sugar Land area. And that's always important to me, is to have my daughter kind of moving into a place where she doesn't feel like she's going to be, for example, the only black kid that is going to a school. I went to a private school when I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and some of the issues and the psychological things that I dealt with being like the only black boy in my grade. That's some of the things that I don't necessarily want my daughter to feel like she has that issue or she has those same dramas and stresses that I had. And so to see the diversity of a school is always kind of a good thing for me when I'm looking at these school ratings for my clients. The next elephant in the room and the big question that I always get asked is, did it flood in Sugar Land? Am I going to be in the floodplain? What's it like living out in the Sugar Land area and how it was impacted by Harvey and all that other stuff? And the answer to that is pretty much the same that I give for most of these suburbs, is that basically no matter where you are, Harvey impacted the greater city of Houston and surrounding suburbs on a whole different level. We had never experienced anything to that magnitude, and everywhere that touched Houston basically has their own set of stories, their own set of neighborhoods that flooded, their own issues. Everybody had their own drama. So we can't necessarily go off of just Harvey, right? But as a suburb that has a lot of creeks, I think the Brazos is running through there. There's a lot of things that just kind of run through that Sugar Land area that would cause it to have an elevated flood risk, similar to your Katie's, your Richmonds, and some of these other communities that I've already talked about on the channel. So Sugar Land is not going to be any different, but there's some things that we can do on our end to make sure that you feel comfortable about your purchase. And one of the first things that we're going to do when we're thinking about buying a house out here in the Sugar Land area for you, we're going to go and look at these flood maps that I have at my disposal as your real estate agent. And so what you're going to see is this is not an unfamiliar thing. You know, Katie kind of looked just like this. Cypress has some parts that look just like this. You're going to have some X zones. There's going to be some areas that are better than others, but you have the Brazos River running through here. And so because you have that, you're going to have all of these zones that are at an elevated risk surrounding it. And sprinkled in between there, you're going to have some areas that are at a higher elevation that aren't in a flood risk. I had a couple houses that we were touring with my clients where their house was in the X zone, but their street was in a floodplain. And that kind of thing can happen as you get into some of these areas where you can see that the neighborhood is an X right now, but all surrounding it are these different floodplains surrounding the entire community. So you're going to have that kind of feel in a lot of these areas in the greater Sugar Land area. I know we hit a couple that were kind of on this edge, and we were also down in this community that I'm hovering on right now. And it's just one of those things that you're kind of going to have to deal with in the greater Sugar Land and the greater suburb lifestyle of living in and around Houston, is that all of our suburbs basically have these super gnarly things that they're either tied to Buffalo Bayou, or that they're going to be tied to the Brazos, or these different rivers and creeks and things that we have surrounding the center of downtown Houston. There's going to be an elevated risk in a lot of places. But the first thing that we're going to do is check out the flood map. And after we've checked out the flood map, the next thing that we're going to do is check out the seller disclosure on the exact property. Every flooding is house by house, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood. I know that when Harvey hit, I had houses that I had on the market that the neighborhoods surrounding my listings all flooded, but my listings did not. I don't know if we got lucky. I don't know if I had divine protection. I don't know what me and my clients had. But if you just did a Google search, or if you just asked, did that neighborhood flood? The answer would be yes, every house over there flooded. And that is just absolutely not the case. And how do I know? Because I've had listings that were live during Harvey that did not flood, while all of their neighbors flooded. And so the next thing that we're going to do is check out the actual seller's disclosure. And so this is the next document that we're going to check out. And so right here we can see that they are not currently in the flood zone that they are aware of. They also currently do not have flood insurance. If you're not in a flood zone, you better have flood insurance. It doesn't matter what anybody tells you. All of my clients get flood insurance. If you're not in a flood zone, it's only going to cost you like $400 or $500 a year for the peace of mind to have full coverage over your house. But that's another story for when we hop on our call and we're talking about making a move. But they are not in a flood zone. They don't have any claims on the house for any flood damages. So that lets us know that that house is pretty safe. And if it was safe during Harvey, then they likely are going to be safe kind of moving forward, unless something bigger, badder, meaner than Harvey comes along, and then we're just all buckled up for the ride again anyway. And the last thing that I like to talk about for all of these communities is the taxes. And so because these communities are so established, and because they've been here, 10 plus years, you have the opportunity for the mud taxes and some of the higher taxes that some of these other communities that are still growing and still developing. So like we've talked about before in your Bridgelands out in the Cypress area, or we've talked about in the Humboldt, Atascocita area that are still expanding and still growing and still have these new developments, a lot of their tax rates are still in the 3% range, where you're going to see on a lot of these communities out in the suburbs of Sugar Land, because they're established and there's not going to be that room for growth. A lot of them are going to have taxes that are a little bit lower than some of these other premier communities that are your Cypress, your Katy, your Richmonds that are still growing. So if you want somewhere that is the ultimate suburb vibe, where you can get something nice and not have to pay the highest of premium for brand new construction or for a house that was recently built, Sugar Land is probably going to be one of the best bets, because you can get that nice suburban lifestyle with the amenities and the great schools without paying a super huge premium on taxes. And hopping on into HAR and checking out that same home that we were just using the flood map on, you can check out and see that this is a 2020 build. So this is just a couple years old in Riverstone, in one of the more premier communities that you're going to talk about or think about when you're thinking about making that move to the Sugar Land area. And this is just a couple years old. And what you're going to see is that even though it is just a couple years old, the tax rate is already 2.45, which is kind of unheard of for new construction. I know we were looking at some on my recent Cypress videos where the house was like 12 years old and the taxes were still 3.1. And so it really is going to be a place where you can really get a nice home, even a much newer home than you would in some of these other places, and still have a tax rate that is sub 2.5, 2.6 in many of the locations. So how did I do? Did I scare you away from wanting to make the move to Sugar Land, one of my favorite suburb communities of the greater Houston metro? I love it. I think it has a great variety of homes, especially if you want something that is a resale and something that has a little bit of character and has a little bit of life to it, that you can put your own stamp on it. You want to be tied to great schools and not too far from downtown Houston, then this is like the perfect location for you. If I can be a resource to you, let me know. I'll drop my number on the screen right now. If you want to see some other suburb communities, they're going to be on the screen right now. YouTube thinks that this is the best video that you should watch, so you should probably check that one out. I'll drop that on the screen right now as well. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have an amazing day.